Alright everybody, welcome back to our second day of constellation drawing. We're going to finish getting the winter constellations in your notebook, and then we will also begin the circumpolar constellations, and as we go along we'll be showing you how to find these in the night sky. I'm certain that we have all finished Auriga, and our next one then is Lepus. And Lepus's other name is the rabbit, and I'm going to zoom in closely here so we can all see the whole screen. So this is Lepus, otherwise known as the rabbit. The way you begin to draw Lepus is you're pretty much just going to draw a rectangle. So we start with 2 rows of 3 stars, and remember that these are the imaginary lines going through here. And then on the diagonal from this top right star, you're just going to bring that down, and you're going to have another star, and you'll have 4 of these, almost like you're making a square. And then starting with this top triangle here, draw another one, and above this one another one, and connects those dots. When we think about Lepus, try and imagine, since it's called the rabbit, that these would be the ears, the head, and the body. Again, when we go to find the constellations in the night sky, always start with Orion, and the first thing you will find is Orion's belt. And if you just come underneath Orion's belt here, you can come down and begin to find the body of Lepus. Alright, after Lepus, we are going to put in our notebooks Leo, L-E-O. Leo's nickname is Lion. And when we start to draw Leo the lion, I always think it looks a little bit like a question mark. And I'm going to have you start kind of toward the bottom of your page, and you're going to draw quite a bright star here, and then directly above it another one, and go ahead and connect the dots. Then on a little bit of a diagonal, we're going to complete the other stars, and it kind of winds around. And then you can connect those dots as they go around, and now you kind of see how I think it looks a little bit like a question mark. Now, this bright star here at the corner has a name. This is Regulus, R-E-G-U-L-U-S, Regulus. And this is Leo the lion. Again, because it is a winter constellation, you're going to go back to Orion to find Leo the lion. Remember, we can start with that shoulder of Orion, which is Betelgeuse. So if we start here with Betelgeuse, to find Leo, you're going to take Betelgeuse and just continue to look on a diagonal going up and to the left, and this bright star right here is Regulus in Leo. So again, starting from Betelgeuse, up and to the left on a diagonal until you run into the bright star of Regulus. Now notice it's not the first bright star you're going to come across. We've got the twins here, and we'll come to those next. You have to go past Gemini up to Leo the lion. Alright, that does bring us to Gemini. So in our next square, we are going to draw Gemini. Gemini is also known as the twins. what you're going to do to draw Gemini is, I think we're going to start with what would be, and I quote, the heads of the twins. So we're going to have a dot here and a dot here, and then underneath them each put another little dot and connect those. These bright stars here would be like the head of the twins. Then we finish putting our stars in, and you can draw a line across these, and these would be like the arms. Then we come straight down, and we have the bodies of the twins, and they're both going to need some legs, knees and feet. And on this one, it's almost like the twin is kicking up its heels here. Because these legs kind of swing out to the side. Now, we said these are brighter stars. This one here to the left is Pollux, P-O-L-L-U-X, and this one here is Castor, C-A-S-T-O-R. And these are known as the Gemini twins. Again, since it's a winter constellation, we are going to go back to Orion. And once you go back to Orion, you always start with the belt and then find Betelgeuse. Betelgeuse is that shoulder, excuse me for a minute, thank you. Betelgeuse is that shoulder on Orion. So beginning at Betelgeuse, you're going to follow a line heading upwards overhead, and you'll come to two rough, almost stick-like looking things that are headed by the two brightest stars. Here's Castor, here's Pollux. And that's how you will find, I'll show you again, sorry. That's how you will find the Geminis. Always start with Orion's belt, go to Betelgeuse, follow it up until you come into these two little stick-like things. Those bright stars are the heads of the twins. There's Pollux and Castor. Castor is the one with its heels kicked up. Pollux is on the left and Castor is on the right. Okay. After the Gemini, what we are going to complete now is we are going to complete what's called the Winter W. This will be the final winter constellation that we're going to be learning about. And this is called the Winter W. Now, there is another constellation in the sky that is a circumpolar constellation that looks like a W, so we have to be careful not to confuse the Winter W with the circumpolar constellation called Cassiopeia that also looks like a W, and we'll show you how to do this. The Winter W is comprised of some of those very, very bright stars from all of those other constellations that we have already put in. So it does look like a W, so what we're going to do is we're going to put these big bright stars in. But what we will notice is after we connect the dots, when we find the Winter W, they are comprised of all of the bright stars from the other constellations. So we'll start up here, top right. This is Aldebaran, and if you remember, Aldebaran is that bright star in the constellation of Taurus. Then we have Rigel, which we know as the knee in Orion. Up here we have Betelgeuse, which is the shoulder of Orion. Back down here we have Sirius, which we know as the brightest star in the sky, and we had Sirius, if you remember, when we did Canis Major. And then over here is Procyon, the bright star from our Canis Minor, or little dog. So all of these bright stars from the other constellations make up the winter W. Now, in your final box, what you're going to want to remember is kind of a definition of what we've been talking about as far as all these constellations. So you're going to write your term, constellation, and we remember it as describing a group of stars that form a definite pattern. So constellations describes a group of stars that form a definite pattern. Some of those patterns are pretty easy to see, like the winter W. Some of them you really have to use your imagination. If you remember Canis Minor, we really had to stretch our imaginations to think of Canis Minor as a dog. That concludes our winter constellations. So what I'm going to do is zoom back out. We need to get yet another new blank page in our science notebook started so that we can record our circumpolar constellation. So you're going to turn your page to the next new blank page. We'll set that back up again with our 6 as even as we can get them squares, and in that top right square we're going to label this the circumpolar constellations. Now these are a little bit different than our winter constellations in the fact that our circumpolar constellations are visible all year round. So we can see these any day of the year. I'm going to zoom in again so you can see what I'm writing a little bit better. So our circumpolar constellations are visible all year long. They are also found in the northern sky. So we always need to be facing the northern sky to find these circumpolar constellations. And when we start with our circumpolar constellations, many of you had told me that of the constellations that you already knew, you knew the Big Dipper. And the Big Dipper is actually part of a larger constellation known as the Big Bear. But since the Big Dipper is the most common one that people are able to find, we're going to use the Big Dipper first, and then we will, just like we used Orion for the winter constellations, we are going to use the Big Dipper for the circumpolar constellations to find everything. So we're going to go to the left of that box that said circumpolar constellations, and we're going to first identify the Big Dipper and get that drawn in. The proper name for the Big Dipper is Ursa, U-R-S-A, Major, M-A-J-O-R. That's the proper name of the Big Dipper. Now, to draw this in, we're going to draw that little, what we think of as the scoop. We're going to draw that in first. So we'll just start down here, and we'll put a star here, and a star here, here, and here. That's what most of us have come to understand as the scoop of the Big Dipper. We'll get our imaginary lines in there again. Then off this top left star, we're going to begin building the handle. So we have 1, 2, 3. And again, with our imaginary line, we can draw that in. Most of us recognize this constellation in the night sky, so hopefully this will be quite easy for you to find. Remember, you have to be facing to the north sky. What we do then to find the other ones is on the end of the scoop portion, these 2 stars are out here are what we use as pointer stars. So we can use these 2 stars at the end of the Big Dipper to find all the other constellations in the circumpolar constellations. And how we start to do that is, as we come off the pointer stars, the main star in the northern sky that they point to is Polaris, also known as the North Star. So we're just going to draw a line out here with an arrow so that we know this is how we get to Polaris. And that is Ursa Major, otherwise known as the Big Dipper, and it is part of Big Bear. Now, after we've drawn in the Big Dipper, or Ursa Major, we're going to come underneath and we're going to do our other constellation in the sky that looks a little bit like a W, not to be confused with the winter W, however. This next one we're going to draw in is Cassiopeia. C-A-S-S-I-O-P-E-I-A. Cassiopeia. And we draw her similar to the winter W, although we're going to slant this just a little bit. And there's a great story about Cassiopeia. Again, just made of 5 stars. That kind of looks like a W. And she is the queen. Now, to find Cassiopeia, remember it's a circumpolar constellation, so we can use the pointer stars from the Big Dipper to kind of help us find Cassiopeia. And what we will do when we're looking for Cassiopeia, I'm going to put another image on your screen here quickly. And this is going to be helpful in learning how to find Cassiopeia using the pointer stars of the Big Dipper or Ursa Major. So remember, the pointer stars are here, and I had said eventually we can follow that out to Polaris, which is the North Star. If we use those pointer stars, go out past Polaris, eventually we're going to run into Cephas. Now he is the king to our Cassiopeia, the queen. So if we just follow those pointer stars all the way out and keep going, we run into Cephas, and down and to the right is the queen to the king. So we have Cassiopeia down and to the right using those pointer stars. Alright, back to our drawings. After Cassiopeia, we are going to put Ursa Major, Ursa Minor. We already have Ursa Major in. This is Ursa Minor. This is otherwise known to us as the Little Dipper or Little Bear. And Little Bear looks similar to Big Bear. So the Little Dipper and the Big Dipper do have some resemblance to each other. So what we're going to do when we draw the Little Dipper is we're going to again start with 4 stars somewhat that would look like a square when we draw our imaginary lines. But when we continue on with our handle here, we add 4 more stars. At the very end of the handle, this star is Polaris, which is that north star. And this has been used as kind of the guiding star in the north sky. So when people are trying to find their way, they used to, I know when ships were at sea, used to use that north star kind of to help them navigate and get their bearings as far as their directions. When we're talking about finding Polaris and the North Star, we're going to use the Big Dipper again. We're going to go back to those pointer stars on the Big Dipper. And what those pointer stars point to is, if you follow them out, you get to this bright star here in the north sky, and that is Polaris. And once you find Polaris, you can finish finding the rest of Ursa Minor, or the Little Bear. Alright, next up, Cephas the King. Cephas is spelled C-E-P-H-E-U-S, also known to us as the King. And how we draw Cephas is we have a star here, and then if we just continue on, it's almost like we're making a triangle, and then come back down and complete with a little box at the bottom. And this is Cephas the King. Finding Cephas in the night sky, you would simply just go to Polaris, and to find Polaris, you start at those pointer stars on Ursa Major. So we have the pointer stars of Ursa Major, follow them on a diagonal up and to the right to Polaris, and if we continue on past Polaris, we will run in to that star that is at the tip of Cephas constellation that we see here. And next up, what would a king and a queen be without their trusted dragon? So the next constellation has the nickname the Dragon, and his proper name is Draco, D-R-A-C-O, Draco. Draco is a constellation that is primarily made up of its head and its tail, and the tail kind of winds around in between the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper. So how we're going to draw in Draco is down at the bottom, it's almost like you're going to make a diamond shape or a sideways square. So we start with 4 stars down here, kind of like a diamond shape. This would be the head of the dragon. From this star here, we're going to put 2 more stars and connect the dots. And this is where Draco's body and tail begins to wind around through the night sky. So as we come from this top star here, we're going to come over and down a little bit, and then over and down a little bit, and then over and down a little bit with 3 more stars, and connect the dots. Then we bring another star down and on a diagonal and connect the dots. And from here we begin to see that tail wind back around and whip back into the night sky with 3 more stars. And this is Draco the Dragon. I'm going to put our image of the circumpolar constellations back on the screen so that we can show you how to find Draco the Dragon. Again, always going back to those pointer stars on the Big Dipper. We can use those pointer stars to see here's the Big Dipper and here's Polaris and the Little Dipper, and that tail comes right in between the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper, and then kind of wraps itself around the Little Dipper, waves to Cephas the King as he goes by, and raises his head into the night sky. One more thing I want to show you while we have this image up is, while most of us are very, very good at picking out the Big Dipper, I wanted to show you the rest of this constellation known as Ursa Major, which is the Great Bear. And so what we use is part of the Big Dipper in here, but there are also many more stars that would complete that constellation of the Big Bear. Again, we don't have to use our imaginations to try and pull out where the bear is in Ursa Major and Ursa Minor. This completes all of your constellation drawings, both the winter constellations and the circumpolar constellations. Now what we will begin to do is we're going to make sure that we can pick out what each constellation is and the stars that they're made up of, that we know their proper names and we know their nicknames, and then we'll start to begin putting these constellations and practice finding them, using Orion as our guide for the winter constellations and using the Big Dipper as our guide for the circumpolar constellations. This will really help us as we get into Star Lab, and also as we get into observing the stars in the night sky as we go out over the next couple of months. We'll continue to practice being able to find these all in the night sky.